At this time, I would like to introduce our next moderator for the Natural Gas Transforming Transportation panel. Dan Genovese is a national leader in market development for natural gas vehicles, compressed natural gas refueling, and has over 20 years of experience in petroleum marketing, convenience store operations, store design, development, and construction. Dan most recently served as the CNG NGV Market Development Manager for Chesapeake Energy and has served as Senior Vice President for Balmoral Petroleum. Mr. Genovese received his bachelor's degree in economics from Metropolitan State College here in Denver, a master's degree in finance from the University of Colorado, and has completed the NACS Leadership Executive Program at Cornell University. Please give a very enthusiastic welcome to Dan Genovese.
All right. Well, I'm kind of not used to being constrained to stay behind the podium, so bear with me if I walk away from the mic and have to come back so that you can hear me. I'm going to invite two of my three other panelists up on stage, Greg Roche and Paul Nelson. So guys, why don't you come up and join me? I'm going to give us a little bit of an overview on the current state of natural gas transportation, give you an overview, and then these gentlemen, along with Greg Fulton with the Colorado Motor Carriers Association, who is en route, he will go ahead and cover some more topics on the HD side. This slide right here that you're looking at is one that I absolutely love. It was taken about, I guess about a year ago now, up in La Crosse, Wisconsin at a Quick Trip, and that's K-W-I-K, Quick Trip, not QT, Quick Trip. Up in La Crosse, Wisconsin. This was their alternative fuels facility. And as you can see from the menu reader board, they have CNG, LNG, they have some biofuels, and then traditional petroleum fuels that they offer. I think probably most notably is those top two fuels, the CNG and the LNG, are the lowest price on that reader board. And when we talk about natural gas as a transportation fuel, you can't get away from the fact that it is just an economic benefit to those fleets and consumers who can convert to it. So that is the driver, and that's what we're going to talk about. We've been talking about the future of transportation in America for a long time. My favorite slide is this one, because I remember back when the Jetsons, albeit on reruns when I was a kid, wondering what that vehicle flew on, and then probably more notably, the DeLorean out of Back to the Future. And I remember at the time, 1985 was the year I graduated from high school. Now, I know I don't look that old, but back in 1985, if you listen to the talk about the future of transportation, you would swear that the flux capacitor, or Mr. Fusion, as the second generation was at the end of the movie, was just around the corner. And so, much like Mr. Bryce was talking about during the lunch presentation, there's been a lot of talk about transportation here in America and what fuel was going to fuel that future, but not much has changed, even dating back to the 80s or to the 60s even, in terms of what we're doing about it. But we have some good news now. Since the shale revolution has taken hold here in America, the future of transportation looks very similar to what we're currently driving in the vehicles behind you. I'm sure several of you have had a chance to kind of talk to about these vehicles. But the reality is that this next step in transportation fuel to natural gas transportation fuel will utilize the same internal combustion engines that we've been using for over a century now here in America. But they'll be able to burn a cleaner, more affordable domestic energy. So these vehicles here, you see the 6 vehicles that are in the back of the room. Those run on both gasoline and natural gas, representing that 3/4 ton truck. All 3 OEMs here in the U.S., GM, Ford, and Chrysler, all began producing a 3/4 ton bi-fuel natural gas truck in response to the 22-state memorandum of understanding, but now we see Ford producing the F-150. We see General Motors entering that light-duty market with the Impala, which is down there. I guess it's the bottom right to you guys. And then the traditional tractor trailer, which are the early adopters, and what these two gentlemen will talk extensively about, that is very much a fixture, and it's probably maybe not as noticeable to us, but to these guys back here, to Greg Fulton, who will be here shortly, that heavy-duty sector of transportation is rapidly moving toward the future in natural gas. I can repeat it because it's worth repeating. The opportunity in natural gas transportation is a result of the shale revolution here in America. It's the safe production, a safe and responsible production of natural gas resources here in America, and it's the result of technology. Alan this morning with WPX talked about the evolution and the technology in terms of the geology and the seismic ability to map the shale formations, and then through horizontal drilling and directional drilling, whichever one you choose to call it, and hydraulic fracturing, the ability to release those hydrocarbons out of the shale. And natural gas, both CNG and LNG, represent a transportation fuel solution that's cleaner, more affordable for 100% of the duty applications. And some people say, well, what's a duty application? Well, if you think of an electric vehicle, it's not going to be hauling an 80,000-pound load over the Rocky Mountains anytime soon with the given technology. So what we're looking at is a real here and now solution for transportation. So keep that in mind when you start thinking about other options out there. Natural gas fits every duty cycle, whether it's your passenger car or whether it's, I know that Greg will be talking extensively about the high horsepower area of mining, marine, and rail. So I can reiterate also that it's clean, it's affordable, it's abundant, it's safe. A lot of people have asked me questions about the tanks on those cars back there and whether the fuel is safe. Rest assured, given its flash point or the temperature it takes to combust the fuel, and the air-fuel mixture, which are a little bit technical for a lot of people, just trust me that it's safe. Those tanks are highly engineered. They even go through a bullet test. They get thrown into a fire. They get dropped on their ends, and all sorts of things to make sure that this fuel is contained safely within it. And if there's ever a breach in the tank, the combustibility and the natural properties of methane or natural gas make it a highly safe fuel to be using on road. It's also powerful. A lot of people don't know, but it has an octane rating of 130, which is substantially higher than even your premium gasolines, traditional fuels, and that allows it to run in high compression engines, very effective in dual fuel applications, which I'll cover briefly, and then the gentleman behind me will cover more extensively. So it does provide a tremendous amount of power opportunity for an internal combustion engine. And then also one thing that I think that we missed quite a bit is its ability to be substantially more quiet than diesel. I tell the story that Waste Management, which picks up my neighborhood trash, converted those trash trucks from diesel to natural gas that run through my neighborhood. And for years with Balmar, I worked for my home office, which was very nice, and it afforded me the opportunity not really to get the trash out on Monday morning until I started hearing the diesel trucks running through the neighborhood. Well, after they converted to natural gas, I was taken by surprise on a couple of occasions and had to be that guy that took my trash from my side of the cul-de-sac to the other side, made my neighbors look like they were absolute trash producers, and catch the trash truck on the other side of the road. So it is substantially more quiet, and certainly that's good for neighborhoods and trash trucks. I can guarantee you that. This is a slide I definitely want to bring everybody's attention to. When we look at the opportunity for natural gas, you can definitely see the different applications, whether it be heavy duty, medium duty, and then the marine rail and the off-road, or what's called upstream. You add all those up, And that light-duty segment is still larger than all of them combined. The light-duty segment is represented by these vehicles, these concept vehicles behind you. So when we talk about the market that's most ready to adopt it, we will be talking about the medium and heavy duty, because one fleet manager can make a decision about 100 or 200 or 500 vehicles. And once they make that adoption, the ease of fueling maybe behind the fence at their fleet yard makes it a much easier decision and a very economic advantageous decision for those fleets, because the payback is so rapid. When we look at the largest opportunity, which is converting our personal vehicles, our spouse's vehicle, or our children's vehicles, that is the largest consumption opportunity. So that's what these vehicles behind you represent, is they represent an opportunity to demonstrate that passenger car natural gas options can be affordable and can be implemented by the automakers, and that consumers, it's a very small premium, especially compared to the premiums on other transportation. It's a very small premium to pay, and you will get a payback, depending on the miles per gallon per car, and the differential between gasoline, a gasoline gallon and a natural gas gallon equivalent. You're probably going to be in the money or breaking even somewhere about 40,000 miles on these vehicles, assuming a $2,800 option. So that's a real opportunity, and I think passenger fleets and vehicles are a real opportunity coming up. I think it's important to cover that the reason why commercial markets are the first to adopt is obviously economics. Their ability, because of their duty cycle, they drive a lot of miles in vehicles that are usually doing work and get few miles per gallon. So that conversion cost for them is paid back relatively rapidly, given the difference between either diesel fuel or gasoline and natural gas. In addition, I think the availability of new and a broader range of vehicles simply allow more companies to adopt the fuel. So I think that is a real good opportunity. When we see the F-150 coming online, I think we're going to see that that fits into a lot more companies' fleets and will allow more companies and commercial customers to convert to natural gas. And then I think one of the other things that we're seeing is, as competition increases and as platforms increase and the ability to convert and more manufacturers get involved, I think we're going to see the vehicle costs come down. We're already seeing some competition and some new products being generated in the tanks that go in the back of these natural gas vehicles, and that's the most expensive component of the conversion, is the tank. So as we see more manufacturers getting involved, we'll see the market do what the market does, and that is increased competition, increased supply, generates innovation, and some competition tend to bring down costs. And then the last thing, which is very important to note, you'll hear us say things like dual fuel or bi-fuel, and maybe you don't understand what that means. A bi-fuel vehicle, like those behind you, are a vehicle that can run on gasoline or natural gas. What that takes away is what we call range anxiety. It eliminates it. A great example is this. If I go visit my relatives back in Indiana, and I want to drive a bi-fuel natural gas gasoline engine-powered car from Denver to Indiana, somewhere in the middle of Kansas, I'm going to run out of natural gas, and there's not going to be a refueling station. But in a bi-fuel or dual-fuel world, that's okay. I can continue to run on traditional petroleum until I get to Kansas City, where I know there's a CNG station, and then from there into St. Louis and on into Indianapolis, running on natural gas. So there's no range anxiety, because that traditional fuel, that traditional petroleum, which is widely available on every street corner in America just about, is always there to support the natural gas. So very important to keep in mind. One of the emerging technologies that I'll briefly touch on is dual fuel. Now that's a situation where we're infusing a diesel engine with natural gas and displacing some diesel fuel. You still have to have diesel in the cylinder because it's the liquid spark plug for that engine to work. You're not adding what we call spark or spark plug or electronic ignition. You're still allowing the diesel engine through pressure in the cylinder head to ignite the fuel, but you're infusing or displacing some of that diesel with natural gas. And I think that technology, which is emerging in a retrofit fashion to allow vehicles that are slightly older or have several miles already on them to convert and take advantage of the lower cost fuel in natural gas, I think that's a real opportunity for them to get in the game and transition new fleet purchases to maybe a Westport or some other type of truck platform. So keep an eye out for dual fuel as it emerges as a real opportunity. And I know that Greg from Clean Energy here is going to be covering quite a bit on this, but the emerging market for LNG and the high horsepower market. What we consider high horsepower are things like the big loaders that are in surface mining applications like the Cat 777s, those big dump trucks, the Tonka trucks that you see in the top of that slide. And also in rail, if you've been following some of the press, you see that several of the, if not all of the locomotive companies out there are testing different applications for LNG on the rail, as well as the marine. And then we heard from Alan and several of the other producers on how they're using LNG in off-road engine applications, whether it be a frac spread or a drilling rig or something like that. So I think there's this tremendous growth opportunity in this high horsepower market to apply LNG for, and you're going to see that emerge. We see supporting technology in terms of micro-liquefaction. That's basically the ability to put a small liquefaction facility close to the end user, like a mine or like a barge dock or something like that, where it's readily consumed by the end user. And then the engine technology. There's not an engine technology company out there that's not working on some form of application for LNG in their high horsepower space. So again, we see innovation happening. We see lots of competitors looking to build the next best thing in that space and bring it to market. So there's a lot of really exciting things happening in that high horsepower space. When I talk about the opportunity for passenger vehicles, you heard Governor Hickenlooper talk about the 22-state memorandum, which brought us that 3/4-ton OEM pickup truck that's been widely used within fleets and is a great application. I think we're going to see that again with the F-150, again, broader adoption. We'll see it with the Impala, which will definitely penetrate the consumer market as well. I don't think I've heard anybody talk about the CAFE standards that have been changed. First of all, we're going to be increasing the miles per gallon over the next couple of years pretty aggressively. But within that CAFE standard are credits for auto manufacturers for certain vehicles like electric, like other hybrids, and also for CNG vehicles. And I think that manufacturers will be taking advantage, producing CNG vehicles to displace those vehicle platforms that aren't quite have been engineered to take advantage of CNG or LNG in the space. So I think that might be an incentive to see more manufacturers jump in with passenger vehicles that run on natural gas. I think we call it the 6x6 pony tank. That's what you see back there. These small, more like a 4-gallon or a 2-day commute supply of onboarded natural gas. It makes the tanks more affordable, makes that conversion more affordable. It's suitable for almost 360 days of use within our lives, and the other 5 days is that trip to Indiana where you're going to run a little bit more on petroleum, getting from here to there. So see that, and again, kind of that tank cost and the ability to kind of create an environment where that tank can fit into the vehicle's platform, into its existing architecture, without sacrificing any cabin space for the passengers or storage space for all the gear that you have to transport, or your puppy, which is what I put in the back of my car. So that's what you're going to see certainly in the passenger vehicle space to support the passenger vehicle market and kind of that lighter duty market. You're going to see these infrastructure strategies. I was just a couple weeks ago at the National Association of Convenience Stores, which is the largest gathering of gas station operators, owners and operators, talking to them about natural gas and strategies to get natural gas into their forecourt, or basically alongside and with their traditional fuel infrastructure underneath the canopy. So there's a lot of economies of scale with installing natural gas dispensers at an existing facility, in addition to the economies of already having a canopy, utilities run, already a paved lot. But there's a lot of conveniences. I know when I was with Chesapeake, we would, all our vehicles were on GPS, so you could track kind of the pattern of the fleet driver. And in markets where our fleet would fill up their CNG, either in a behind-the-fence situation where we installed natural gas at one of the field offices, or at a shared facility somewhere else, we would still see that fleet vehicle end up at the local 7-Eleven or the local convenience store, because these guys are workers, and they tend to be dashboard diners, is what we call them in the business, where they grab the roller grill hot dog and the Slurpee and the Coca-Cola or the Gatorade or the Chew, and they head out to do their work for the next 10 hours. So there's a lot of amenities to that. And when you talk about consumer fuel, if we're truly going to make this a light-duty fuel, we definitely have to have it at the location where people are very familiar with, people want to go, they're already conditioned to go to fill up. So I call it the Goldilocks strategy. I'm not necessarily sure that the gas station on Main and Main needs a $1.5 million compression system to service the light-duty customers that may develop over the next couple years, that they would be able to service. So they would go with something smaller, a much smaller compression system, maybe with a little larger storage system, and then maybe there's some scalability where they can graduate into kind of the medium size and then ultimately a large size compression system as the business grows. What it will do is open the door and seed the market with plenty of locations for refueling so that people can adopt it, the general consumer can adopt it. So a lot of work going on within the compression and compression packaging business on trying to create these Goldilocks solutions for the consumers. One thing that's important to note, and this is the home refueling appliance, and that's a little bit what these vehicles are designed to take on, is being able to refuel these vehicles within your own garage overnight with a low cost, somewhere between, something less than $2,000, a small profile about the size of a dorm refrigerator. You would be able to hook your CNG tank, 4 or 5 gallon CNG tank up to this home refueling appliance when you park your car at night, and in the morning you would have a fully filled CNG tank in the morning. One of the strategies, and we talked to several utility companies across the country, is kind of adopting the cable box approach to getting these deployed. And what that looks like is many of you have Dish or Comcast, something like that. And if you have HD, if you look on your bill, you're paying about $15 or $20 a month for every HD cable box you have, in addition to the services, whether you have basic cable or whether you have the HBO package, or in my case, the Big Ten package. And so they kind of collect a rent on the infrastructure piece and then charge you for the service. That would be very similar to what a gas utility would do, is that they would supply the box, install the box, and then obviously it would be encouraging demand at the domestic level. So they don't have to add new pipe. They don't necessarily have to do a lot of reconstruction to support higher pressures in the line. It would be a great avenue to get this fueling out and deployed to consumers. So that's definitely a growing opportunity and something to look forward to over the next couple years. We always talked in terms of, one of the things that I always say is I'm kind of a preacher of the gospel of CNG and LNG and its applications and benefits to America. And what we've been doing over the last several years is just kind of creating a web of interconnected companies and making sure that if a retailer is looking to put in natural gas, is to get them to a couple different compression suppliers so that they can understand what's needed. In addition, connecting that retailer to some area fleets that we know we're converting their fleets to run on natural gas so that they can all sit down, come up with a business arrangement that makes sense for them all to make that next step forward. It's a little bit like matchmaking. I've oftentimes said that I'm the Chuck Woolery of natural gas. I'm always trying to help people make a love connection, and use the fuel. So that was kind of, and that continues to be the mission, is connecting all the different pieces of the ecosystem together so that we can get this broadly and rapidly deployed here in America. And the last slide I'll leave you with before introducing Paul is this is an adoption curve of the different continents over time. And if you look at North America, it's it's very flat for a very long time. But if you look at the Asian market, and Robert Bryce talked a little bit about it in his presentation, you see this rapid uptake, this exponential uptake that's occurred, within a short period of time. And I always challenge people as I kind of close out, is that how close is America? When you look at these vehicles back here, which on average cost $2,800 as an option to add natural gas to them, how quickly can America adopt natural gas as a transportation fuel? When you take into account the consumption of that light-duty market, are we close, and are we close to that exponential growth that you see here on natural gas? So I will close on that, and you guys can certainly think about that. I want to introduce Paul Nelson. Now, I've known Paul for a couple years. Paul has extensive experience in natural gas. He's with Ward Alternative Energies, and he has 25 years of experience in the energy business, and he's probably most famous for he's the father of clean energy. He started with Blue Energy, which is now Clean Energy Fuels. He holds a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Science in Chemistry and a Bachelor of Science in Business Finance, all from the University of Colorado. Please help me welcome Paul Nelson.
So, this is forward and back?
Yeah, just the green button.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our session to talk about natural gas as a vehicle fuel. I'm going to focus on medium and heavy-duty applications with compressed natural gas and talk a bit about the vehicles, some case studies, what's driving interest, and how we provide fueling solutions. If you've been reading the popular press as well as energy industry press this year, or even just fleet press, you'll see lots of articles about natural gas vehicles. This is one here that it was in Business Week back in May, talking about the emergence on the national scene of natural gas as a vehicle fuel, displacing diesel as well as gasoline-powered vehicles. So I'll talk a little bit about the market opportunity, why we think that's a large opportunity, not just nationally, but here at home in Colorado. I'll give a short commercial about Ward Alternative Energy and how we approach providing our products and services. Then get into what the fleet decision criteria are, what's driving a fleet manager to consider natural gas as a vehicle fuel, talk about case studies, and then just a smattering of some photos of new vehicles that are available, both medium and heavy-duty applications from the original equipment manufacturers. So why is it a big market? Well, even a small piece of a very huge market is a big market. And if you just look at what the fuel market size is in Colorado, it's about 3 billion gallons of motor fuel on highway application sold every year here. And so for those of us that have been in the industry and now see the sort of the convergence of the right emission standards, the right technologies, and other policy drivers come together, we know that this fuel type can capture probably 5% of that market. That's a $300 million market just in Colorado alone. A little bit about Ward Alternative Energy. We were actually created by Ward Petroleum. Ward Petroleum is talked a little bit about at the bottom of that slide. They're a 50-year-old exploration and production company in the Mid-Continent and Rockies area. They've been primarily drilling for natural gas, but also some oil. And this, well, about a year and a half ago, Bill Ward, who's CEO of Ward Petroleum, decided to launch Ward Alternative Energy to focus specifically on natural gas vehicle fueling infrastructure in and around Colorado. And so I joined the team about a year ago. What we're doing is building, owning, and operating the fueling infrastructure, both for light-duty, medium, and heavy-duty natural gas, primarily compressed natural gas applications, both for fleet yards as well as for commercial fueling sites. We're also providing O&M and design build services for fleets that want to own their own station, and we provide other support services including vehicle conversions and vehicles service. And this talks a little bit about that aspect of our business. Earlier this year, we purchased a company called Fuel Tech, which actually has its roots back to 1990 when a number of us created a company called Natural Fuels, which became Blue Energy, and as Dan mentioned, Blue Energy eventually became Clean Energy Fuels, but they spun off their vehicle operations in Colorado in 2003, renamed it Fuel Tech. We bought Fuel Tech earlier this year so that we could help fill the gaps for our fleet customers when there's not an OEM product readily available for them to purchase on natural gas. Then they can come to us for that conversion or the vehicle service. And in many cases, what we're doing is supporting the new truck and vehicle dealerships in Colorado support their customers with NGV conversions that are OEM compliant and vehicle service. We're focused, as I indicated, kind of where Ward Petroleum has been drilling for natural gas and oil for 50 years. That's kind of our home, Colorado, the Front Range of the Rockies, and in the Mid-Continent area. We think we can sort of flesh out the infrastructure in this part of the country to complement what's happening in California, Texas, up around the Great Lakes and the East Coast, led by companies like Clean Energy. Types of fueling stations, you'll hear people talk about time fill and fast fill, and the difference is that a time fill station is designed to put fuel into vehicles, whether they need 10 gallons or 100 gallons over a long period of time, say 10 hours. You can imagine much smaller compressors. You don't need storage. The fuel is essentially compressed directly into the vehicles. These are really for fleet yards, so imagine a UPS facility that wants to fuel their vehicles overnight would use time fill. Some fleets at their own fleet facilities want fast fill, where you can put fuel in at 5 to 10 gallons a minute, the same fueling rate as gasoline or diesel, or a public access or commercial fueling facility, and that's what fast fill is all about. We're involved in both of those applications for fleets. And finally, how do we develop our fueling locations? We actually use forms like this. In fact, over at our booth, we have this type of information we hand it out to fleets, and we gather information about their vehicles. But most importantly, we have the fleets tell us where they want to fuel. And then we take that information, coalesce it, and develop CNG fueling locations to meet those needs. So what are some of the fleet decision criteria that drive purchases of natural gas vehicles today? Well, I have a bit of a compare and contrast to what it looked like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there were light-duty offerings from Ford, Chevy, and others, although some of those went away and they're now back. But we didn't have the strength in the emission standards. We didn't have the more mature technology around medium and heavy-duty engine technologies, such as what's offered today by Cummins. And so broad offerings today, low, stable price of natural gas, very plentiful, as Dan was talking about, tough emission regs. What that means for fleet managers is that they can see an alternative to diesel and gasoline where they don't have to comply with the onerous requirements that are being placed on diesel. Those same requirements placed on natural gas are easy to comply with. We don't need DEF or the urea blue fluid that diesel vehicles now have to have their engines meet EPA standards. Natural gas can meet those standards without any of that added to the vehicles. And so today it's really an emissions compliance, very low cost, stable fuel pricing, and mature engine technology that's driving this market. A little bit about how natural gas as a motor fuel is priced and why it is stable, in addition to the fact that we have well over 100 years worth of resource base or reserves in the U.S. To meet consumption requirements for natural gas, whether it's vehicles or other applications. The reason that natural gas as a vehicle fuel is also very stable is what you see here, the components that comprise the price of natural gas. The commodity component is actually a minority. The rest is moving the natural gas from the wellhead through pipes to the CNG fueling facility where it's compressed and delivered into vehicles. And so the part that could be volatile, even though it's been very flat for a number of years because of plentiful supply of natural gas, is the commodity that's priced, say on the NYMEX exchange, just like petroleum. Even if it moves a bit, it's a minority of the total cost of natural gas as a vehicle fuel. And when you contrast it with petroleum, about 70% of what you pay at the pump is actually the NYMEX price for petroleum, whether it's gasoline or diesel. So as that moves on the NYMEX, it has a dramatic impact on the retail price. And so here's a comparison. If you think about natural gas, CNG is nationally priced at about $2 per gallon. If you had a 50% increase in the underlying commodity on the NYMEX exchange, it would increase the price from $2 to $2.25. If you had a 50% increase in the price of gasoline or diesel on the NYMEX exchange, assuming, say, those fuels are being priced at $4 a gallon, they would increase by $1.30. So you see the volatility is dramatically accelerated or enhanced in petroleum fuels. A little bit about emissions compliance. This chart here in the upper right-hand corner is bracketed by the NOx, or the oxides of nitrogen emission standards, and let's see, I think the particulate emission standards for heavy-duty engines here in the U.S. The large box there is what diesel engines had to meet, say, 15 years ago. That tiny, tiny box in the lower left-hand corner is what heavy-duty engines have to meet today. And natural gas can easily meet that. And so this is a struggle that fleet managers have today buying new diesel engines, is complying with that tiny white box in the lower left-hand corner. And then they look at natural gas and they can meet that without a problem. We see criteria pollutants cut with natural gas, whether it's CO, NOx, particulate matter, volatile organic compounds, but also you see it in greenhouse gases. If you look at the California Air Resources Board, wellhead to wheels studies about greenhouse gas emissions for the life cycle of natural gas as a vehicle fuel, you'll see 20 to 30% reduction in greenhouse gases in addition to these other criteria pollutant reductions. And of course, the industry is maturing. I mentioned that before. We now have a couple of decades under our belt. And along with that, the industry has developed robust safety and other codes and standards. And so whether it's building a CNG station or operating natural gas vehicles or upgrading a repair facility to accommodate natural gas vehicles, those standards are in place today. And fire and other code officials can look to those and rely on them for guiding the safe construction and operation of those. These photos here, Dan showed some of this, but it's a smattering of the vehicles available directly from the automakers today, cars and pickups and vans. But probably more importantly for the immediate market opportunity, which is the most economic, medium and heavy-duty truck applications, where often vehicles are using 5, 10, or 15,000 gallons of fuel a year, and if they're saving $2 a gallon, they're saving tens of thousands of dollars per year. You see trash trucks and cement trucks and buses and all sorts of applications that are now directly available from the same engine, chassis, and body manufacturers that the fleet managers are used to buying vehicles from for their traditional fuels. And then a little bit around policy. Our governor here in Colorado has been a real leader. Back in 2011, he and Governor Fallin from the state of Oklahoma came together and created this MOU. 15 other governors jumped on, and through that method, they've been able to pool purchases from the automakers of natural gas vehicles for the state fleets in these different fleet states, and you identified there on the map. And then this year, the governor took another step, and his policy office and his Colorado Energy Office and others came together, creating the Governor's NGV Summit. to pull together fleets, the gas industry, other stakeholders in the governor's office to talk about a cohesive strategy to drive NGV deployment at a new level in Colorado. Since that summit in June, additional follow-on programs have occurred, and we're looking for great things from that program in 2014. And finally, this just summarizes the existing incentives here in Colorado. This is similar to what you see in a number of states in the U.S. Relatively good tax credits, but I've highlighted here in blue those items that are changing coming into 2014. There will be a bill introduced in the Colorado legislature to significantly enhance those tax credits, specifically for medium and heavy-duty vehicles, but I won't go into that too much because I think Greg's going to talk about that. And there are other incentives around sales tax abatement when you're buying a heavy truck, and switching from a fuel decal program for excise tax on the fuel to a low amount of 3 cents per gallon, et cetera. And then finally, CMAQ, which are federal funds coming into Colorado that will likely be, a portion of those will be repurposed for natural gas vehicle deployment. So the incentive picture has been relatively good, and it's going to be great into the future. A couple of quick case studies. Denver International Airport first began deploying natural gas vehicles back in the mid-90s when they opened, and that was actually started at Stapleton International Airport. Hundreds of baggage tractors today move your baggage around at DIA. All the shuttle buses out there that are operated by the airport run on natural gas. And you see in the upper right-hand corner, that's one of the buses. It looks like it's just a big AC unit on top of the bus. That's actually where the fuel cylinders are. There are, UPS operates almost 200 vehicles here in Denver. Western Disposal and other refuse companies are deploying dozens of vehicles and literally replacing, in many of those fleets, every diesel they retire with a natural gas truck. In the lower left-hand corner is a booklet that the Colorado Energy Office put out on some in-depth case studies around natural gas fleet adoption. Two mini case studies I've chosen here. One, Loveland Ready Mix. They chose 2 years ago to convert or replace their diesel fleet up in Johnstown, Colorado, with natural gas. These are not conversions. This is direct from the factory, cement mixing trucks with a Cummins 9-liter engine. And they put in a nice fueling facility. This is a time fuel application. And they're already well ahead of their return on investment target, which was 6 years. It's down to 5 years. And that's ROI on the extra cost of the vehicles and the fueling infrastructure. The other mini case study is Western Disposal up in Boulder. They have a fleet of over 100 refuse trucks and tractors, and they're at, I think, about 25 or 27 natural gas trucks now in their fleet. These are two examples of refuse trucks that they're operating with the CNG cylinders integrated into the body direct from the manufacturer, Bridgeport in this case. And they're one of those fleets that every diesel they retire, they're replacing with a natural gas truck. And then finally, just some quick pictures here about heavy-duty engine and vehicle options that are available to fleet managers today. And this is really just to give you the impression this industry is here. These options are ready today for fleets to put in place. Cummins Engine Company is really the leader on the engine side of the equation for on-highway applications. They've had the ISLG, which is a 9-liter version of what had traditionally been a diesel engine. They redesigned it for natural gas. That's now thousands of those are in use around the world, running well. They built on that this year with the introduction of the 12-liter. In 2015, they're planning to bring out the 15-liter, and we also hear a 6.7-liter as well. So broad offerings across the medium and heavy-duty market application. The catalytic converters they use are just like on your car. It's a 3-way catalyst. They don't need the complicated urea, DEF systems that diesel engines require today to comply with EPA standards. And then I just have a couple slides here about 4 of the leading manufacturers. MAC, you see, for CNG as well as LNG, and all range of horsepower applications are bringing products to market now. And so some of these were introduced in 2012, but the rest of these are coming online in 2013. Kenworth, again, half dozen different truck platforms have natural gas available. These are all these different manufacturers that are using the Cummins product. Kenworth, that's their tractor. Peterbilt has a broad range from refuse trucks to tractors to cement mixers and straight trucks. So, I mean, just like the diesel vehicles you see out there today, these are available directly from the dealers and manufacturers as drop-in replacements for diesel or medium and heavy-duty applications. And Freightliner also has a broad range. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Excellent information, and as you can see from his presentation, just the availability of tractors in terms of horsepower as well as platforms, what you can put on that body and what you can do in terms of work are readily available. And thank you to Ward Alternative Energy and what they're doing in the market to grow natural gas use. We're very happy to have all our panelists, but really happy to have Greg Roche with Clean Energy here to share with us what they're doing in natural gas and you know what they just announced a new endeavor that's going to address natural gas LNG supply and availability to that high horsepower market. And as we all know, Clean Energy has been the leader and done a lot of heavy lifting in terms of getting natural gas transportation rolling forward here in America, and we all are very appreciative of that. Greg leads Clean Energy's infrastructure program for national and regional fleets. He is also developing new markets for LNG, such as marine, rail, and other high horsepower applications. Prior to his current role, he developed Clean Energy's market for natural gas as a trucking fuel for the nation's ports, intermodal terminals, warehouses, and distribution centers. He holds a Master of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from UCLA and a Bachelor of Science degree in Nuclear Engineering from Iowa State University. So help me welcome Greg Roche from Clean Energy.
Thank you, Dan, and it's a great honor to be here today. And a big thank you to everybody in the audience. You actually stayed for after lunch, and if you stayed through the whole day, you get to take test drives around the track on those cars and back. See Dan for details. Before I get started, 2 announcements. First with me today, James Orsolak. Where are you, James? James is from our Denver office. I've got to jet out of here and get to the airport right after this, but James will be here. If you have any questions, you can tackle him. And my second announcement is I have a daughter that's a sophomore at CU Boulder, so go Buffs. But after what I've heard today on the economy and jobs and energy in the state, I'm really concerned we're not going to get her home after she graduates. She may end up here, which is actually a pretty good thing. I'm going to tell you a little bit about clean energy to give you context for the meat of my presentation, which is about on-road trucking with LNG and segueing into, well, what's the next big thing? So Clean Energy, we were founded by Boone Pickens about 17 years ago, and we do have roots you heard here in Colorado. And we're unique in the industry from a couple of perspectives. So one perspective is we do both compressed natural gas fueling and liquid natural gas fueling. So we're agnostic from that standpoint. We believe it's application driven, and each fleet operator will make a decision on what works best for their fleet. We're also a little bit different because we produce our own form of natural gas for some of our stations called renewable natural gas. And that's the byproduct of landfills and other processes, dairy farms and so forth, where we can capture and harness methane as a byproduct of waste and put it back into the supply chain. So we're doing that today with several projects around the country. We fuel a lot of the fleets in California with that renewable natural gas, which is basically zero carbon. And then finally, we're a little unique because we're vertically integrated. So on the CNG side, we manufacture our own compression equipment. And on the LNG side, we manufacture a lot of the equipment used in our LNG stations. But at the end of the day, we're all about natural gas. It's all we do is dispense fuel. We've been in the LNG market for quite some time, for over 10 years. We purchased our first LNG production plant in Willis, Texas. It was a plant that was already constructed. We built an LNG plant in Southern California. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. but we also have a fleet of 80 delivery trailers that work around the U.S. and deliver LNG to all of our stations, to all of our customers. So we actually ship more LNG for transportation purposes than the rest of the market combined. We are all in on natural gas for fuel, whether it's LNG or CNG. We have a presence in 26 countries around the U.S., or around the world, excuse me, through our IMW subsidiary. That's mostly CNG equipment, but we are seeing an uplift in LNG equipment as well, and we think there's going to be a robust market for both of those. And then we're really big on partnerships. We have a great partnership with General Electric, Pilot Flying J, our Eagle LNG partnership I'll tell you about in a moment. But as Dan commented earlier, when you think about a station location, we also agree we'd love to partner with existing fuel marketers, add CNG or LNG as just another fuel at the pump so our customers can go into the C-store and get what they want as well. That's great when it works out. Doesn't always work out that way, so we do a lot of private stations and cardlock stations as well. And just as a comment also, you see the LNG and the CNG triangles. The LCNG triangle, for those that aren't familiar with this, references the ability to make CNG, compressed natural gas, at a liquid natural gas station by taking that liquid out of the tank, pressurizing it, and expanding it into vapor form so that you can get either type of fuel at those stations. Liquid natural gas, it's a mystery to a lot of people. You're all industry experts, so you're probably up on it. But a lot of people think LPG, is that what you're talking about, propane? So we do a lot of education on what really is LNG, and it often comes up in the context of safety and siting. But LNG is simply the same gas that goes to your home, heats your furnaces, used in your cook stoves. All we do is refrigerate it. We clean out the carbon dioxide and water that might be in the gas stream, refrigerate it to minus 260 degrees, and that temperature becomes a liquid. Once it's in liquid form, it's very easy to distribute the product just like other liquid fuels. Oops, looks like we jumped ahead. Sorry about that. The picture you see on your upper right is an LNG production plant. That's our Boron plant. Lower right is an LNG delivery trailer. Carries about 10,000 gallons of LNG over the road. A little bit less to be compliant with the 80,000-pound road limits in most states. Delivered to stations where it's dispensed, very similar to other liquid fuels. Now, this is the big game changer story, and I don't want to repeat what you just heard, but from my perspective, this is what's interesting in the world of high horsepower. When I started with Clean Energy almost 7 years ago, you could not buy a natural gas powered truck in America. They were not made. A 9-liter engine from Cummins Westport was just being released on the market. A 15-liter engine from Westport just being introduced to the market, but no OEM offered those in a truck. So as a company in trying to solve this never-ending conundrum of chicken and egg, we went to all of the OEMs and said, Mr. Freightliner, Mr. Peterbilt, Mr. Kenworth, what would it take for you to build natural gas trucks in the US? And for the most part, they ignored us. But Kenworth said, and I think they were joking at the time, they said, well, if somebody ordered 100 trucks, yeah, we'd probably think about it. So we cut them a $17 million check and said, we'll take 100. The next day, we had the entire PACCAR management team down at Clean Energy trying to figure out what in the world are you talking about here. But that's what got the program started, and this is exciting news because it's the same thing that'll happen in the passenger car industry as well. You get the ball rolling, and pretty soon you fast forward to today, and every manufacturer of trucks in the U.S. has a natural gas truck offering, and every day they come out with more models, and every day more engines are announced, so that whether you want to do a dedicated 100% natural gas engine, or you want to do a dual fuel engine, or you want to do a retrofit of an existing truck, those products are all coming to the marketplace. It's incredibly exciting. And one of the roles that we play in the industry is building out that infrastructure. So 2 years ago, we announced in a partnership with Chesapeake Energy that we're going to build America's Natural Gas Highway. This is a deployment of 150 natural gas truck fueling stations so that for the first time ever, you will be able to go border to border, coast to coast, powered on natural gas. Last year, we built the first 70 of these stations, which made that vision possible, coast to coast, border to border. This year and next year, we're expanding on that network, so we're extending it in more locations, and we're adding density so that it is more and more convenient for drivers of natural gas trucks to go where they need to go. They're no different than you or I as consumers. You want fueling to be quick, you want it to be convenient, you want it to be in places where you're already going. And that's what we're striving for now by building out this density. So it'll be a combination of long-haul trucking routes, so you can do that coast-to-coast trip, but also local area networks. So for example, in Dallas-Fort Worth, we've got a really robust network going in. In the Denver area, we're working on 4 station locations that'll be built over this next year, and that'll complement the 8 or 9 CNG stations that we already have in Colorado. So it's all about continuing to build out this infrastructure. So, you know, we've jumped in ahead of the market because in our belief system, this is going to happen. All we have to do is answer the question, it all sounds great, but where am I going to fuel? Well, this is where you're going to fuel. And there are other companies that have also stepped up to the plate after we got the ball rolling who are also building out networks. So you will have a competitive marketplace just as you do today. So it'll be a combination of the customer deciding where do they want to fuel and for what reasons. Some examples of stations that are operating today. So we've built a lot of stations. Now we're going through and opening those stations as customers are deploying their fleets. So we go through a regular startup process now. We're starting up several stations a month, and that number is increasing each month because of the advent of this 12-liter engine from Cummins that you heard about earlier that went into commercial production in August, and now you're starting to see those trucks hit the street. So that's all well and good. Here we are, we're clean energy, we're all about vehicle fueling, on-road vehicles, our noses to the grindstone, and we're focused heavily on that and trying not to get too far in other areas that are of interest to us. But you know, time marches on, and wouldn't you know, all of a sudden over the last couple of years, there's been this uptick, this rising tide of interest in other high horsepower markets that also want to use natural gas as their fuel. In the world of high horsepower, because of the energy that they need to carry on board and the energy that they need to consume, liquid natural gas makes a lot of sense for them because of the energy density of the fuel. So as we move forward in our world, we also are involved with other markets. So you've heard this morning the E&P market, like trucking, that's already moving forward very rapidly. It's moved beyond proof of concept. It's happening in a big way. Rail, mining, and marine, they are now playing catch up. And in different ways, they're all doing their own different pilot tests. So for rail, the engine manufacturers, there's 2 primary manufacturers. This is publicly announced. They're all working on natural gas engines, both new locomotive engines and retrofit engines. Some of the Class 1 railroads have gone public with their plans on how they're using LNG in the pilot tests they're doing. Some of the mining companies have gone public with their efforts with LNG. And then on the marine side, you've got some early leaders that are out there who have gone public, such as Harvey Gulf down in Port Fourchon in Louisiana is doing offshore service vessels with LNG. Toad has announced that they're converting some of their Jones Act ships to LNG out of Tacoma and Jacksonville. So we were surrounded by this interest in doing LNG in other markets, and we were really looking at how do we address the market. because the market is quite different than other markets that we've been in, and that is you've got a lot of fuel consumption in a very concentrated area. And so how do you serve that market? Well, you really need liquefaction as close to those markets as possible. We're very good at the on-road vehicle market. We're not experts in these other markets. We've got a long ways to go to come up to speed. So we came up with a partnership between General Electric and Ferris on attacking the high horsepower off-road market. And the idea is we each come to the table with some expertise in these different markets that leverages off what we're all trying to accomplish collectively. And GE actually plays several roles. I'll mention that in a moment. So GE is very big in the oil and gas industry. They are long on natural gas, just like everybody in this room is long on natural gas. And they were looking for ways to capitalize on their equipment side of the market, where they're very big in liquefaction equipment, as well as their capital side of the market, where they do a lot of financing. So GE brings to the table the equipment and that financing. Clean Energy brings to the table the experience of owning and operating and building liquefaction plants. Ferris brings to the table the experience of the logistics and delivery demands of moving LNG into the E&P environment. And with those building blocks, we'll also look at how we can serve these other markets. I'm going to, this is a little bit of a salesy slide. We've listened to our customers. You know, we think they've led us in the right direction, so we're all well on our way. But our initial focus is we've announced that we're going to look at LNG in 6 states. So in the map here, you'll see Illinois and Ohio are dark. So those are 2 states that Clean Energy is already underway working on liquefaction. But the other states, Florida, Texas, Ohio, Colorado, North Dakota, and Washington, those are new build projects. And the idea is these markets are the intersection of different market segments that need LNG, so we can combine the demands from these different market segments. Instead of building a plant that's just focused on one, we can aggregate that demand and provide better service across the board to these customers. One example I mentioned, our boron LNG plant. We are really, really proud that we built something in California that's industrial. Not many people can say that. At the time we built this LNG plant in Colorado, or California, Mitsubishi was trying to build an LNG import terminal in California, and that project never got legs, never got approved. We're able to get approval on our project for all of the right reasons, that it's domestic fuel, it's cleaner, and it's part of California's efforts of cleaning up the environment. Yes, we had to jump through a lot of hurdles and hoops. We had to move the plant because of endangered species considerations, but we were able to get through that. And the plant has been so successful that today we're working on adding a 3rd production train to the first production trains at that plant. Another example, Ferris has a lot of experience, especially in the Canadian market, of delivering LNG into very demanding consuming locations for E&P purposes. And they're now doing this in Colorado and other markets as well. What's new for us, what's coming? Well, we've got a proposed project in Tacoma. So this will be actually in the port on land owned by the port. It's kind of hard to see from this picture, but the green space interior on this peninsula is the LNG plant. We've got piping going from the plant to the marina, to the dock, so we will be able to directly fuel vessels from the plant to the terminal. We'll also be able to load LNG trailers, ISO containers, and rail, eventually when rail is ready, at this plant. We have another plant in Jacksonville that we're working on. So this is a plant on property that we own. And this plant will also have a dock going out into the water. Different approach, so this plant will load bunker barges, and the bunker barges will go fuel the ocean-going ships. The plant will also be able to fuel ISO containers and trailers. So this is a plant, actually there was some press on this today that's getting a lot of attention. But we're very excited because Florida is a unique market. Florida is gas constrained. There's not a lot of gas in Florida. There's no LNG in Florida. The nearest LNG comes from Georgia. So with transportation, it's just not cost effective to ship LNG down, all the way down into southern Florida. So we're excited that this plant will be able to serve Clean Energy's needs for trucking fuel throughout Florida, as well as marine vessel use as part of cleaning up the emissions of these vessels. And then once again, when rail is ready, we can add rail for loading as well. The presentation has contacts for all of us in the partnership. Look forward to any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. Definitely some great information, and it again, we all owe Clean Energy a great debt in terms of just doing some of the early heavy lifting and getting the market moving forward for both CNG and LNG on road, and it's very encouraging to see what they're doing in terms of opening the door to that high horsepower market, that off-road market, mining, marine, rail, and what many of you guys do in E&P. So that's very great. Now, our last speaker, Greg Fulton with Colorado Motor Carriers. Greg never sent me a bio to read, so that means I can make up anything I want on him, which I'll do. Actually, Greg and I have a little bit of a long but detached history. My dad was he worked for White Motor Corporation in the heavy truck industry all his life. It was subsequently bought by Volvo. And it was that job that brought us out to Colorado. My dad was one of Greg's members prior to his passing. And you may think that that means that Greg's old. But really what you need to understand is Greg started with the motor carriers when he was 12. So he's really actually pretty young. So help me welcome Greg Fulton with Colorado Motor Carriers. And he's going to present some thoughts for us.
Dan, thank you very much. I apologize. I'm kind of like, I like to think that I'm almost doing like just in time here. Our interim Transportation Legislative Review Committee was meeting today, and I was working with some of our folks down there, and it was supposed to be ending at 11:30, and they only got through the first bill, and we had 3 bills up. So apologize for that. And Dan, I did want to say that I'm glad I didn't send my bio, because I heard you're getting the Big Ten channel, and I'm a Penn State guy, and I suspect you're probably from one of those other schools out there. And so anyway, let me start out by talking just briefly about who we are. We represent over 600 companies in that, throughout Colorado. And we're really the part of the presentation on here are the folks who are going to use this and buy these products. And I want to let you know about who they are, what their concerns are, and I think how, in terms of we can address some of their concerns and make it more attractive for them to get into the natural gas industry and natural gas vehicles. Let me say that we have a long history of working in this. In fact, Paul and I worked on, I think, the first natural gas bill together about 16 years ago. If people have complaints about that legislation, please talk to Paul, because I think that was part of it actually. But we have worked, we've got a great interest. We're agnostic when it comes to fuels. Effectively, we realize that there are different fuels that work for different purposes better. I will tell you that when we start to look at the heavy duty side out there and that, the only real option that we have out there at this time, to diesel is natural gas. And we're thrilled that it's coming on strong. This just gives you a sense. This is the perfunctory thing of saying how important we are, and I think my folks always want me to use this slide, so I'll just note that we do most 80% of all the freight in the state. The other thing is that, I think a lot of people mistake trucking as being this dirty, older industry. Really we have made more strides on air quality than almost any other industry. We've had a reduction of 98% in particulate matter and NOx, since 1988. It's an impressive story, but the fact is we need to do better, and we know that. And one of the ways we can get better is through natural gas. This is an interesting phrase that Bill Graves, former governor of Kansas, and been the ATA, the American Trucking Association, president and CEO for the last 10 years. And Bill was mentioning before their natural gas summit that he said, it isn't a matter of whether natural gas is going to have a major presence in this industry, it's really when. And I think what we want to talk about today on my part is how can we expedite that? The other thing I wanted to mention is that this is kind of the situation of High Point. We have an EPA Smart Way program. Steve McCannon is here. And one of the things I wanted to mention is how quickly our industry can embrace programs. EPA Smart Way program is a program that is targeted at the freight sector and that toward adopting strategies which reduce emissions and improve fuel efficiency out there. And within a relatively short period of time, you've seen an adoption of those strategies, to a great degree by this industry. In fact, next to the Energy Star program, the EPA Smart Way program is EPA's greatest success story. Okay, where do we stand today? I mean, this is one of these things where, an industry where a few years ago, we really actually were starting out there. In fact, I think there was a dearth of this out there, especially relative to the rest of the world out there. As you can see, we're like less than 1% of all our trucks out there today are natural gas. Now, the interesting thing is when you look at 2017, what we're looking at there is we're looking at moving anywhere between 4 to 10%. Now, we're talking about upward of 400,000 to 900,000 trucks. That's a huge number in that. Now, that's going to be in our light to heavy duty sector on this end of it, but it does show that the marketplace is starting to appreciate natural gas. Now, that span is greatly affected by what's going to happen out there on diesel prices and other items. When you get to, let me say who's going to be in this first wave and who's there right now, because I think that's important for you to know. In that first wave, I would just tell you is UPS. They're a leader out there in that. They have ordered just another 700 tractors, LNG tractors. You have CR England, one of the largest truckload carriers, and Swift, as well as Schneider. They're all testing a limited number of those units to see where they may best fit. You have the refuse industry, including waste management in terms of allied waste, as well as people like Alpine Waste in our area. It's expected by 2020 that about 90% of those trucks are going to be natural gas. We have our oil field area. That happens to be our most rapidly growing sector of the trucking industry because we have so much going on out there in the drilling area. And we have got private fleets such as Lowe's, who have recently noted that all of their future purchases of trucks will be natural gas. As you can see, when we get to 2050, it may sound like a pipe dream, but I would tell you right now, when things turn in this industry, they turn very fast. Some people have compared us to lemmings. Hopefully that's not the case where we'll go off the cliff or anything like that. Let me do this. Okay, let me say why our companies are looking at this and why companies are. Of course, the fuel cost, it's a huge difference. Fuel is anywhere between 60 to 70% of our cost. It's an incredible element, and whenever that diesel cost goes up there, it breaks the back of companies on that because it's very hard to pass that along fast enough. The second part of that is we like the price stability in terms of natural gas. We aren't seeing those huge swings that we see. And as Paul Nelson did a good job of pointing out, actually, when you do end up even having a significant price change, the effect actually within the natural gas side versus diesel is not as dramatic. Secondly, the environmental considerations. We recognize that we have some additional standards to be met. Our people do care about the environment and they want to do their part. They see natural gas as a good fit for this. Energy independence. Our folks are very, very patriotic, big supporters in terms of our country. And the fact is they would much rather have their energy come from this country than outside it. Along with it, they also realize when those drill rigs are out there and we're drilling for natural gas and we're drilling for oil out there, we're creating jobs and economic development. You know, what happens is those people in those jobs buy items, those communities flourish, and we haul everything that goes into those communities, so it's in our best interest to support this move. Public image. I think everybody in our industry is looking to show ourselves as being a good person in the environment and have a green image out there. Last but not least, and I'd say an important factor that's helped us, especially in those states where they have significant tax incentives such as tax credits or grants out there in the heavy-duty sector, is a situation where that availability in funds has helped to offset some of the substantial costs associated with getting into this sector. Now, the other side of it, and that Dan asked me to speak about, was kind of what are some of the obstacles we're seeing. And I say slow, blind corner because I will tell you right now, what happens is in a lot of cases, we look at some of these things and it's like an iceberg. We're seeing the very top. Sometimes we don't know what's underneath it. It's not our first rodeo in alternative fuels, I'll just tell you. One of the biggest concerns that I think I hear from folks is, Greg, we remember when you talked about dual fuel a number of years ago. They've been through biodiesel, E85, and the question is this really it? I would just tell you that to all that end of it, I'd say this is really it. A lot of those other types of fuels, although they have a place out there, had some key flaws relative to natural gas in my eyes. Second is a lack of good and consistent information. You know, I think what's happening out there, I was in a meeting with a number of CEOs in the trucking industry in Washington. We had a major official from one of the natural gas companies come up and talk to about, there's 30 CEOs in the room and said the cost differential for a tractor was about $25,000. CEO sat next to me, knew because he had been looking at it was around 80 to 100. He said, you know, Greg, we don't need to be oversold on this end of it. We need people to know their product and we need them to be upfront and honest with us on this. So what I'm going to encourage is, like, don't oversell the concept. The concept right now in terms when we see these certain things about when the infrastructure will be done, or the fact in terms of when these engines and these vehicles are going to be available, you know, let's be more cautious. I think we were having the Cummins 15 and 15 is now the Cummins 15 liter and 16. So these things all tend to end up eroding some of the confidence. The cost of the equipment, it goes from anywhere from 20% to 100% actually in terms of the differential on this, and that's why to the diesel equivalent. The engine technology, I really think that's come a long way. I think there's a lot of concerns, and I think misguided in regards to horsepower and torque. We're going to have more engines, and it's really moving fast. Fueling infrastructure, I will want to say, and I appreciate the efforts on clean energy and a number of groups, Flying J and those folks on that side. The one thing our folks will say is we don't only need an infrastructure, we need a competitive infrastructure. Their fear is that it's just like the one gas station in one town type concept. We need to have a flurry of those to happen. We realize it may start out this way, but we need it to end up, and we would encourage you to work with petroleum marketers to add those elements into their infrastructure. The service infrastructure, the one thing I would just note is even like one of our newer dealerships, which is Kenworth here, it's only been built about 7 years ago. It's going to cost them $300,000 to make that modification for natural gas. It's anywhere running between $50,000 to $200,000 per bay. And some people are just saying, look, we can't afford to make that conversion over, so that's holding them back from moving into natural gas. And probably an element that I would just say is one of the biggest factors in our industry and biggest concerns, especially for the small to mid-sized carrier, is the residual value. At the end of 5 or 6 years, because they're going to trade it because it's getting at the end of that warranty window, not to mention the fact that our drivers, which is our hardest thing to get right now and our biggest concern because of a shortage, want new trucks. They're like big kids. They want the newest things out there. So after 5 or 6 years, we're going to go in to trade that. A real concern right now is what that secondary market looks like today. And are we going to get as much as even a used diesel for that end of it? We think it's moving in the right direction, and we know it's going to take a little time, but this is where I'm going to get to an issue on this. Other items I just say is weight. I don't think weight is as big an issue. I think we've got some alloys coming on that will reduce that weight. We could use a weight exemption, particularly on the interstate on that side, but I'm not going to go there. Let me say the other elements, like I said, weight out there. The item in terms of like, the other challenge I think when we look at this is a return on investment in terms of with the diesels getting even more fuel efficient. Essentially, when you're moving from 5.5 to 6.5 to possibly 7 out there, then you're ending up extending that return on investment for the natural gas side as well. Refueling is not the issue, but I'll just tell you, if you talk to a lot of drivers, they're going to point to this. Hours of service is one of our biggest concerns, and the recent changes in the federal level have made it even more of a concern. So any additional time on that refueling is going to really end up making it less attractive. And that the long-term prospects, we end up saying, everyone's saying, where's this going to be? What happens if we start exporting natural gas to China and Japan? What's that going to do to the price in this market? I think we know that we've got plenty of natural gas, but these are the elements that I think will have some of our fleets and their managers laying awake at night. Okay, I'm not going to go through this, but here's some of the just fleets that we're using out there right now. And let me see, I ended up, I'm going to get down to this. Okay, let me go, on my one slide here, I realized my staff ended up saying, look, Greg, we ended up having a little bit of problem with on the file itself. So they had a couple of these files that they printed up actually for me. But let me talk about the strategies to overcome these obstacles and issues as we see them. First off, let's get some consistent and accurate information. Make it very simple. And I think NGA and people like, in terms of, the NGV group out there, as well as ANG has done a great job of starting to do that and have that same message get hit over and over. Second, and I think we saw that with Governor Hickenlooper, is that strong leadership on the state and federal level. I was glad to see Tom Hunt here from the Energy Office. Tom has been a real supporter and a real leader in that, and we appreciate his support. Third, and I can't stress enough, is the whole issue of financial incentives and tax credits. The cost differential is substantial for these vehicles. Our industry works off a 3 to 4% profit margin. It is not easy to pass along these costs on that end of it. We need legislation, and what we will be doing in the next year in conjunction with Ward Energy and a number of groups, bringing forward legislation that will parallel what we saw last year on alternative fuels in terms of the lighter duty market. It will provide tax credits for actually heavy-duty vehicles to help offset and encourage people to purchase those vehicles. I know a lot of our fleets, feel that once that goes in place, they will be able to move forward. To let you know how important that is, we have UPS buying 700 new LNG vehicles this year. And I met with them recently and asked whether we would get any in Colorado. And they said, Greg, we can't afford to put it in Colorado because the fact is the cost differential is so great. We're putting those units in places like Oklahoma, Texas, Indiana, these other states that are helping us to offset and manage those costs. A second part of that legislation is really something about what we call, eliminating the penalties of buying a natural gas vehicle. Today we penalize people because we have something out there, which when we end up having a natural gas vehicle that may cost $200,000 out there, we're going to apply a FET, the federal excise tax, into $200,000. So in addition to the additional money and the other items on this, we're going to essentially have you pay maybe almost double the tax. Secondly, we do the same thing on the state level, on the specific ownership tax, and that will be another dimension to the bill that we introduce next year. The other part I think is important is the grant funding, not only for vehicles, but for infrastructure. And the CMAQ funding that I believe you know, the CDOT, as well as the governor's office and others have been working, should be a big shot in the arm in terms of injecting some money to make this happen, this conversion and the move over quicker. Some of the other things I think we would like to end up seeing out there is a fact of how we might address this residual value issue. One thing I saw from Clean Energy, which I thought was a really interesting move, was what we call the guaranteed lease. And it's kind of like a walk-away lease where if you essentially lease that vehicle through them, after a 3-year window or whatever, they're going to take back that vehicle in that. Now, there's some ties to this about using their facilities and other things like this. But what it's doing is eliminating that fear of that trucking operator, because those trucks happen to be their greatest asset and their greatest expenses. So some of those ideas like that need to be explored and moved forward. And last but not least, I just think one of the things that's happened, and a big step forward in this state, is looking at this, sort of the tax equalization end of it, especially in the federal level in terms of how we're doing taxes out there on natural gas. And the point that we do need to infuse money into the highway system in Colorado, and I think the move that was passed last year, House Bill 1110, did a lot of that. So I just wanted to thank you for having me today. I apologize, one of my 2 or 3 of my slides here seemed to have a glitch my staff was working on, and so they sent me along with part of my presentation, but not the rest of it there. So I want to thank the group here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as we go along. And thank you all for showing up. I know it's late in the day, and gosh, I'll tell you, you probably have a lot of other things you'd rather do, but listen to me. So thank you again for having us.
Well, we are at the end of our session. We're going to have some Q&A, but I would encourage you to grab these guys. If you have some questions written down, ask them on this break. We'll be taking, looks like about a 10-minute break. Stretch your legs, go to the restroom, grab something to drink. We got a great panel coming up. Be sure to grab these guys and ask them some questions, and I'll thank Greg and Paul for joining me up here and sharing about natural gas, and I appreciate your attendance and attention. Thank you.